Let's take a look at the chemical composition of castor oil. These are the acids that it consists of. 90 to 95% of the oil is made of ricin oleic acid. Notice the first 5 letters of the word, ricin oleic. You can see the word ricin there, hence the reference made earlier to the seed itself being highly toxic because it contains ricin. Now, when the acid, the ricin oleic acid, is extracted from the bean in the form of an oil, it is no longer toxic. So don't let that word confuse you or worry you. Here's what's interesting about this particular acid, which is what castor oil is primarily made up of. This acid is considered a triglyceride. Now, if you know your health topics, you know that triglycerides are associated with heart conditions. So you might ask yourself, why would I expose myself to a triglyceride, let's say in the form of a castor oil pack, put it on my body, and absorb it into my system? Well, what's interesting about castor oil, and you'll see this theme repeated over and over again, is that even though it's 90 to 95% triglycerides, it actually lowers the triglyceride count in your body. Now, how it does this, that is beyond me, but when you begin to discover all of these facts about castor oil, you become just overwhelmed with amazement of what this product can do, and it defies logic. Now, the first 2 acids that castor oil is made out of are omega-9 fatty acids. And it's important to understand all of these acids, and you'll see why in a minute. The linoleic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid, and the linolenic acid is an omega-3 fatty acid. Now, what's important about these 2 fatty acids, omega-3s and omega-6s, is that the body cannot produce them. So in order to get these essential fatty acids into your system, you have to eat foods that are rich in these fatty acids. For example, flaxseed and flaxseed oil contain generous amounts of these omega-6 and omega-3 acids. Castor oil contains quite a bit too. This may account for the effect it has on your constitution and when used externally. The fatty acids, when put on your skin, especially in severe skin irritations and like scar tissue, actually get pushed into the tissue, and what they do is push the scar tissue out. They soften the skin and rejuvenate the skin, and this explains why the scar tissue is lifted out when we use castor oil. Now, the other acids that are on this list here are not terribly important. Now, let's talk about a few other components of castor oil that aren't shown here. There's a lot of debate online as to whether or not castor oil contains vitamin E. And the answer is very simple. It does contain tocopherols. It doesn't have a large amount of vitamin E, but it does have vitamin E in it. And this helps explain many of the wondrous things it can do for your skin. So when you begin to dig deeper into what castor oil is composed of, a picture emerges. These fatty acids are very good for your system. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it after a few more slides go by. And I'm going to explain to you what I think castor oil does for your system. Now, I want to show you something interesting. We know that no 2 snowflakes are alike. Every snowflake that falls from the sky is different. Let me ask you a question. Did you realize that the castor bean, and there are pictures of beans here, every single castor bean is different from every other castor bean? Now, I want to ask you a question. Do you know of any plant, bean or seed, that has a characteristic like this? Every single castor bean is different than every other castor bean. I find this amazing. And when you begin to dig deeper into castor oil and all of the things it can do, you're just overwhelmed by its versatility and its usefulness, not only in health and healing, but in our chemical industry, in our environmental industry. It's just amazing. And we also mentioned it's found in almost 1,000 cosmetic products. I wanted to show you something interesting here. Here's some examples of the health challenges that castor oil has been known to cure. And I put them in a circle and pointed arrows to each one for a reason. If you start on the top, it says flatten the belly. Castor oil packs have actually been known to flatten people's belly. People who have extended stomachs, a lot of extra tissue, it's actually flattened people's belly. It's cured hyperactive kids, it's stopped snoring, it's prevented miscarriages, it's increased the T11 cell count, the immune fighting cells in the body, it's cured arthritis, and it's cured appendicitis. Now, I wanted to show all of these things because it illustrates an important point. None of these health conditions are related to each other. They're all completely different. Now, it's true that there may be some interconnectivity inside the body, but for all general purposes, snoring, let's say, for example, and flattening the belly don't seem in any way related. Yet castor oil can bring about an effective cure for these conditions. And as I stated earlier, it can literally cure over 300 ailments. Again, it's just an amazing product. Now let's take a look at why this may be and what castor oil actually does inside the body. The best way to come to an understanding here is to take a look at what Edgar Cayce says about it. Now, it's important to understand that Edgar Cayce gave very few explanations as to what castor oil does in the body. And the explanations he gave were very short and didn't go into great detail. So the best way to come to an understanding of what castor oil does when you put a pack on, for example, is to study the testimonials and to study the writings of famous doctors who used castor oil in their clinics to cure their patients and recorded the treatments. This is medical documentation. This is not hearsay. So based on that information and what I've read that Edgar Cayce has said in terms of why castor oil does what it does, I've come up with two basic concepts. It appears as if the oil acts upon the mind forces. Now, the best way to explain this is it appears that the oil allows the mind in the body to become active in producing better coordination between parts of the body and in bringing the spirit into closer communication with the body through these mind forces. It's hard to really understand what this means, but I think one way of looking at it is if you've ever noticed some people are really out of touch with themselves. They go through life kind of in a willy-nilly, helter-skelter fashion. They don't seem too concerned about how they look, how they feel, what they say, whether they're learning anything, whether they're eating the right foods. It seems like there's a disconnect there. Their mind and spirit are disconnected, and their mind is not connected to their body. They're not really focusing in on things that can make them a better person, spiritually, mentally, and health wise. So, number one is it appears as if the oil helps bring these forces, these mind forces, back in coordination with the body. Now, the other thing it does, and this is very similar to the first thing, it appears, and Casey stated this, that consciousness, mind quality, awareness of a particular sort exists within every tissue, cell, and organ in the body. He states that castor oil brings the body to a closer working togetherness and cooperation between the minds of these tissues or organs, just as the body relates to the spirit, which motivates it and gives it life. In other words, he's saying that every system in our body, every tissue, every cell, every organ, every part of our body has a sense of awareness, a consciousness, which vibrates with our entire being, our spirit, and our mind. And the castor oil seems to coordinate all of these things back together again. And the example that he gives, and he doesn't go into great detail, he illustrates this concept by pointing to a piece of machinery that has gotten old and rusty. After you lubricate it with oil, like castor oil, all of the parts start moving again. And this is a good way to look at the castor oil. It just seems to get the whole system going again. Everything in the system. Not just a particular part of the body, but everything inside us. Now, another issue which is always brought up with respect to castor oil packs are the immune system. The immune system consists of many components. It consists of the lymphatic system, the condition of the blood, toxins in the body. The more toxic we are, the weaker our immune system is. Casey refers to a part of the body called the Peyer's patches. This is lymphatic tissue located in the small intestine. It is not something that's spoken about very often in medical journals. In fact, I'd be willing to bet most doctors are not at all familiar with it. It would appear that these patches, this lymphatic tissue, has a profound effect on the elimination of toxins, the absorption of nutrients, and a host of other things, including building up the immune system. Edgar Casey alludes to this in a few different circumstances and readings, and he states there's an electrical component to these patches. And when they're working properly, this electrical component is allowing the body to function normally. Again, how the oil affects this part of the body remains to be seen. But this is what Edgar Casey states. Now, I want to mention a couple of quick stories. Like I said earlier, just when you think you've heard and seen it all, along comes another story which defies logic. And there's two quick ones here I want to relate to you. One concerns an elderly gentleman in his 80s who was put into the hospital to die. His kidneys had stopped working. The doctor said he's not going to live more than a day or two. He had cancer as well. He told his son to run to the pharmacy and grab a bottle of castor oil, which his son did. When he came back, the dad took the castor oil, rubbed it over his entire body. Why he did this, I don't know. Maybe he had intuition and insight that this is something he should do. A few days later, he left the hospital, perfectly healthy. What exactly happened? What took place? Where did his disease go? I don't know. I've never seen anywhere in Edgar Cayce's readings or any medical journals that tell you to rub castor oil over your entire body. But this is what he did, and this is what happened. Another quick story. A young boy who was completely out of control. His behavior was not controllable. Even medication couldn't quiet him down. He couldn't sit still. He couldn't listen. He couldn't learn. He couldn't pay attention. He was constantly fidgeting. 2 days of castor oil packs on his stomach, and he was completely normal again. I can't explain it, but it's documented.